Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're well on this fantastic Friday. And you're looking absolutely fantastic, by the way. And this is video 2 of 2. Now, if you missed the first video, go check it out. Because we talk about, well, I was getting a grilling. Actually in an email. But I think they raised some real valid points and potentially speak about how the FBI and law enforcement truly did get involved in Brian Koberger in the first place, and maybe that actually makes sense. So if you missed it, go and check it out. But watch this first, because what I'm going to be doing in this video is just addressing some things that have been noted as fact by many people, but in fact they're not. So take this as like a public service announcement, bit of a public service announcement, as we dispel some myths. So number one, Brian's car was seen at 1122 King Road. That hasn't been proven as fact. Not at all. Definitely not been proven as fact. And I will say this, and I know it angers some people, but it would seem that a specialist with the FBI had actually noted that it wasn't his car. And when we saw the last court hearing and Payne was challenged over the information around Brian Koberger's car and whether his car was actually caught by any cameras, it would seem that he said no, it wasn't. Number two, Brian had messaged victims stalking. Didn't happen. There's still people out there, and I don't even know why I'm having to raise this still, but Brian didn't contact anybody on social media. So if you're someone who watches Lazy Masquerade, you've been misled. Didn't message anybody, didn't message victims, didn't message anyone. There's absolutely no connection by way of contact between Brian Koberger and the victims. Number three, Brian had issues with females. Hearsay. Doesn't seem he had issues with females at all. Multiple pictures depict Brian Koberger with females. He was at a bar once, and even that is not proven as fact. It was a story that came out that stated he was at a bar, he'd made a pass or made a comment, called someone a bitch or something, and he had to be reprimanded by staff, removed or told to chill his beans. But I will say that story has not been proven as fact. And anything else with respect of Brian Koberger and being problematic in any way with anyone is currently hearsay. Now, there has been some statements made about how he was at school with respect of being a harsh marker. We've addressed it in the past. Again, there's been nothing that has come out absolutely solidly, and the only people who have spoken real publicly about Brian Koberger from a schooling perspective are ex-people who taught him and have said that he was actually a very, very good student. But again, at the moment, we can just say that's hearsay. Brian purchased a knife from Amazon, or a knife sheath and knife. That, again, is not factual. What we've seen in documentation is that there was a search warrant put out to Amazon with respect of finding out whether he had indeed tried to purchase one. And we've had nothing come back to confirm that he did indeed purchase one. So at this moment in time, it is not factual that Brian Koberger purchased a K-bar, knife or sheath from anywhere, let alone Amazon. Brian changed his number plates on his car to hide his identity. No, in fact, Brian Koberger, he changed his plates because it would appear that he was looking to return back to Washington. He was from Washington. He's from Pullman, so I'll get there in a minute. He's from Pennsylvania, but don't have to have a front plate. So he was at college, busy. Didn't change his plates. He's obviously gone back home, and he has to go back, and he was getting his car in order, so he would be legal for his return to Washington. So if anything, that doesn't say that he was trying to hide his identity. That would actually say that he was changing his plates to conform with the law that stipulates that he is required to display a front plate in Washington, so would actually dispel any rumours about him being fired before the crime happened. Next one, Brian's phone was switched off at the time of the crime. Again, that is non-factual. It's a possibility, but it isn't a fact that he specifically turned his phone off at the specific time of the crime, because there's two issues with this, and this is what you have to understand. The time frame exists because they're trying to seemingly tie Brian Kohberger into the crime. I've seen a white Hyundai Elantra, or a car that appears to be a white Hyundai Elantra. Brian Kohberger drives a white Hyundai Elantra, so they're seemingly trying to amalgamate these two entities into a timeline to make it make sense. So first of all, we don't truly know what the true timeline of the murders were, because if you remove Brian Kohberger and the white Hyundai Elantra, for instance, out of the equation, it doesn't necessarily mean the crime happened when they say it happened. Does that make sense? Are you with me? But just say that is when it happened. Still, as stated in the PCA, his phone was simply not transmitting to a tower. So, ergo, it may be that he was just in an area of low signal, poor signal, or his phone had simply run out of battery. So it's not factual that he purposely, intentionally turned his phone off to conceal his whereabouts. Just thought I'd put that out there as well. Brian had connection to Wi-Fi at 1122 Kings Road. That, again, is not factual. I believe that original story came from Steve Gonsalves. I don't think that that's specifically what he was saying. I think that what he was trying to insinuate was that Brian Kohberger had been close enough to the property that he could have connected onto their Wi-Fi, not to specifically say that he had connected to their Wi-Fi. Because my question would be, if someone had connected to their Wi-Fi, there would be a connection, that would be a firm connection, and Ann Taylor wouldn't have been able to say within the court that there is no connection between her client and the victims for fear of perjury. Brian stalked a work colleague. This is the young lady who she had approached Brian to assist her, and the story would say that Brian would assist her in installing CCTV or of some description in her property to keep her safe. That story got twisted, made it look like Brian Kohberger had in fact been stalking her, and that kind of exacerbated an already situation that we knew could be manipulated and twisted, and it indeed did get twisted. But that story, we don't even know the accuracy of that story. We don't even know if the version that is kind of positive to him is factual either. We don't know. So, not factual. Brian was fired from his job before the murders. As we spoke about during the plate situation, there doesn't seem to be any evidence whatsoever that has been put out to confirm 100% that Brian Kohberger was fired before this happened. And recently, Jules of All Trades, she has done a refresher on this subject, if you like, and brought to light things that were stated by the Washington State University. And the verbiage contained within their letter seems to state that he was removed because of the situation, not prior to the situation. And finally, the DNA found on the sheath places Brian at the scene of the crime at the time of the crime. And we don't know what's going on with the DNA. There is some massive problems with the DNA. First of all, the DNA is transportable. It's touch DNA, so it could have got on there. It would have to be a big leap. Of course it would. Of course it would. To say that Brian may have touched something or someone who touched something that then touched this sheath, and the sheath just happened to unluckily fall into this house. But it can happen. It can happen. Just because Brian Kohberger, his DNA has been told to us that it was there, doesn't mean that it was there. That has to be proven. In order to be proven, everybody has to see all of the documentation that would go hand in hand with that complete procedure from start to finish, because there are some serious problems with it. One of them mainly being, was the sample size big enough to do what they claim to have done? And secondly, the time frame with which they did it seems to be far too short. if you look at Othram themselves, who are seemingly the people who handled it, they haven't also claimed any connection to this case. They have a website. You can go on their website and you can look at the cases that they've been involved in and the cases that they have put together in order to catch someone. You would think that they would perhaps, even though this has got a long way to go, if they were confident with their work, you would think that they'd perhaps say that we helped catch the quadruple homicide perpetrator in the Idaho 4 case. It's a huge one. Huge. But in fact, they don't mention it whatsoever. It's not on there. Maybe they're waiting for a conviction just to make sure they don't shoot themselves in the foot. But their procedures, if you go back through their cases and how they do it and how long it takes a lot longer than a few days. So that is questionable. It is questionable. So at this stage, I'm saying that the DNA connecting Brian Kohberger to the crime, even though it's factual in terms of they have made it factual and made it a connection, the entire DNA situation has not yet been proven to be, how can I say, not a load of shit. Let me know down below if you think there's any other facts out there that are not actually facts, that people are pushing forward as facts, and let's turn the comment section into a reference for anyone who needs to have a look to see what is out there, what they're being told, what they're believing, and perhaps they shouldn't be. You enjoy the rest of your Friday. You're looking absolutely amazing, and I will catch you all over the weekend.